from the studios of Seed Motion Pictures. The Four Pastors.
I mean, if you want to be transgender, there's a church for you. If, whatever you want to be, they got a church for you.
Mm-hmm.
And
how heavy does that weigh on you? The burden of a pastor is tremendous.
Ray,
I think you just go ahead, Pastor.
I don't let that bother me too much.
Yeah.
I mean, when we talk about homosexuality, transgender, I tell all my people, listen, God is disgusted by two men or two women coming together sexually. I think he's disgusted by the fact that one wants to change their sex. But I think God is equally disgusted with you rolling around the backseat of your car with someone of the opposite sex who's not your spouse. Sexual sin is sexual sin. And so people will leave kingdom life because they may be practicing a homosexual lifestyle. And I say, hey, that's wrong. We love you. You can still be a part. But when I preach and that comes up, it's going to always be on the side of homosexuality is wrong. But I've had people leave my church recently because they just couldn't deal with the fact that they were living in sin sexually and they're not married. And I know because they told me. And I was like, oh, these people will actually sit right close to the front. And every time sexual immorality came up, I kind of felt bad because they had to deal with the fact that I'm saying it's wrong. But I don't feel bad because that's biblical. And so if people want to leave because there's a church for them, transgender, homosexuality, or even you can come here, we don't care that you're sleeping with your boyfriend or you're living together and okay, no problem. I am not compromising. Listen, if it was up to me, you could stay. I would be a little sensitive towards that because a lot of people are doing it and I care about your feelings. But this book, this is where I take my cue from. And so if it says something is wrong, it's just wrong. And if you got to go, bye. And that's race too. I've had people say, Pastor, this church is really just a all-white church with a black pastor. Then I've had the other side say to me at times, well, we're really, a white church with a lot of black people in it. I'm like, you know what? I get it. You guys are all a little confused, a little uncomfortable. We're right where I want y'all to be at. Because we are not trying to recreate anybody's culture. We are establishing our own within kingdom life as what we will look like. And we do look different because we are made up of primarily two different races. And we're trying to honor a little bit of both cultures as we blend it together and make our own. At the end of the day, I think that's the beauty of the Bible. God is saving people from all around the world who have different perspectives, different experiences. And it is in God's, I think, will, and maybe I should say in his awesome wisdom that he knows that he cannot give one person or one church every experience. And so he diversifies that. So when we come together, there's a piece of that God has given to you in certain gifts and abilities that when I come in contact with you, I get to experience a piece of God that I don't always see in my own personal setting or my own personal church. And so, I enjoy the beauty of the body and the diversity in it because when the body comes together, I get to see a better picture of the entire body as opposed to a little piece that I'm usually familiar with because it's my perspective and it's my way.
Let me say this. I wasn't talking about, I don't care what people, if anybody knows me, I don't care what people think in terms of preaching. That's not my point. My point is, I was trying to say, we don't have a voice, a strong voice to the nation. We don't have a strong voice to the nation anymore. It's more ambiguous than I'm not correcting you, Pastor, or anything. I'm just saying,
no.
I just want to make that to be clear.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I believe like you do, we don't have a voice for example, and we probably getting into the next question. Look at what has happened during COVID-19. We said, okay, this disease is dangerous. They shut us down. The church has lost a lot of civil liberties during COVID-19. Nobody hardly fought back. Those who did, we called them crazy. And then we're gonna come back. This is gonna come back to haunt us. It proves, to me, COVID-19 exposed weaknesses in the church.
Yeah.
Strong weaknesses that we really don't have a voice. They're telling us how many people you can have at church. Not that I'm for the health thing. My point is our civil liberties were given up. Nobody is, there's some people that are standing up, but I'm saying we need more of that. And, here we are, some of us believe in healing and all these things. And we said, okay, we're going to follow Romans 13, which is true, and we should. But now they've taken it to the point where it's almost a control mechanism, and they've taken away a lot of our civil liberties. That's what I'm talking about. We don't have a voice in the sense of where we are a radical voice that says, no, you can't tell me when I can meet. And you can't. The first time in the history of America, they shut down the church for a disease that's not the most dangerous disease, period.
Right.
It's just not. It's control and manipulation, and we're giving up civil liberties. And I think that what COVID exposes weaknesses in us that we need to reevaluate. And I think we don't have enough. We're not homogeneous. So I think that's one of my frustrations. I felt bad myself at how I meet I don't have a church building right now. I'm in a rented facility. I have to follow everything the state tells me to do. And it's like, okay, if I had my own building, I'd be fighting on the front lines, not because I want to meet and it's dangerous. It's because, wait, am I going to let them just take away my civil liberties? That's going to come back to haunt me. That's what I'm speaking. I hope you understand what I'm talking about when you're talking about.
No, that's good. Actually, I wanted to comment on that and kind of got sidetracked with kind of what Ray had said. So I think that's two different voices. And here's what I mean by that. Walk with me for about 20 seconds. My generation, our generation, the generation before of Black people have what I consider been lulled to sleep. So we got a piece of the American dream. We can move out now into the suburbs. Racism isn't nearly as bad as what it was in the 60s and the 70s. And so in some sense, by getting rid of a piece of the pie, what happens is the Black community that once was really connected and tight and picking its own leader, we're now kind of scattered. And for some of us who are Black, it's like, listen, man, things are good. It's not what it used to be. So let's not mess with what I got going on because things are better for me. And so what has happened is the Black community is not picking its leader. And then when the Black community, like Black Lives Matter, an organization like this comes along, they are actually picking and choosing from all these different groups of people who are oppressed, who are feeling bad. Then they created underneath an umbrella, Black Lives Matter, because everybody cares about race, or at least will recognize that it's an issue at times. To whereas when it's a transgender, when it's homosexuality, the church is so against that. So I give you that background to say this. When we think about the history of our country, for when it comes to race, things change when white people get involved, okay? There is no Underground Railroad if white Christians aren't like, slavery? This is ridiculous. Because Black folks wasn't hiding in Black-owned houses. There was not Black money that was given to promote and fund this thing. White people got involved and said, no more. And it started with the church, obviously. We're gonna do something about it. Same thing is true with the civil rights movement. Sure, Black people got together and we marched, and Dr. King used media with great wisdom because he knew white people around America would see dogs being sicked on people, hoses being sprayed, and all of a sudden, white people were like, whoa, and it probably started with the white woman, meaning the wife of a white man, and she's having pillow talk. She's like, something wrong with that. And her husband is like, really? Because it was a lot of women who were involved in the movement who got it kind of going. And then once white men decided to say, hey, you know what? We're going to do something about this. Things begin to shift and change. Because at the end of the day, as much as we protest as minorities, Black, Hispanic, Asian, well, Black and Hispanic mostly, as much as we protest, as much as we stand up and fight, when white men and women get involved, they actually have the power, the ability, and the position to change legislation and to really make some changes that affect all of us. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. More and more white people are getting involved, like, what's going on here? Like, pause for a moment. And so what I think would need to happen is, when it comes to race, it's gonna take my brothers who are here today, who are white, collectively to get together and say, maybe we can create the platform, but we gotta still find a couple of African-American or Black men or pastors who will also present or represent the platform publicly, because they will identify not only with those who are hurting, but they can say things at times about race that if we say it, it's gonna be misunderstood, it's gonna be, improperly used, and then it destroys the movement. With regards to some of the legislation you just mentioned, as far as with regards to church and our rights in the church, this is where, as a Black community, part of the church, we got to say, all right, we'll stand with you, but we actually probably need a white face and a white voice to say, hey, you're imposing on my civil liberties. And we'll be like, yeah, you are. Because at that point,
Boy.
at that point, we don't have, just like when the officer pulls me over, if he pulls me over, he can deny me my rights a lot easier than he will Pastor Kevin or Pastor John.
I think the conversation is really good. I really would like to have a second round at it, but I'm going to be respectful of that. And I want to ask you one final question, and then I'll let you go. Is COVID-19 from Satan? Why or why not?
Who wants to go? I'll go first. I'll put my answer out there. I'm not sure that it's from Satan. I think Satan is using it. When I look at the text, pandemics, plagues, national or worldwide events like this, floods, God seems to be behind them, orchestrating them, usually because of people's sin. So it's hard for me to believe at this point that Satan is behind this worldwide crisis that has gotten a lot of our attention.
So you say
I think
that
Satan may be working within it. Like he uses it as a way to distract us. But when I look at the text, I just don't see Satan responsible for plagues, pandemics, national, worldly disasters. God seems to be somewhere working in the midst of it. So it's hard for me to say it's Satan. That's my short answer.
is this a plague that's brought by God, or is it just some evil that Satan has brought to the world?
Yeah.
I'll throw out that, we live in a fallen world, and it's certainly, whether it's the plague, whether it's racism, homosexuality, whatever sin you want to tag, is all a result of fallenness, because the original plan, none of this was there. And so when, man said, I got a better idea than you, God, of course, the seed being planted by Lucifer in the garden. We've done nothing but go down, to use a phrase, since then. And certainly sin and rebellion and all the things that this world is saturated with right now gives place to demonic activity to take advantage of everything. I don't think God wastes anything. He's always involved in trying to, my story, okay, it wasn't God's will that happened. Like I've done prison ministry now for about 34 years, 36 years actually. And, guys always say, well, God put me here. And I said, you're a liar. I didn't put you here.
Like your
I
style.
said, you disobeyed your parents. You disobeyed people. You disobeyed preachers. You have worked hard. And you've earned your right to be here. And you went totally against the plan of God for your life. This is not the best that God can do with you. Put you in prison. Absolutely not. So don't ever say that again around me. And it shifts guys' thinking. Well, I think a lot of times we, again, give the devil and blame God a lot with a lot of stuff that we bring upon ourselves because of our own rebellion and our own selfishness and our own rejection of the plan of God. Does God waste anything? No, he'll take the prison experience and do something with it good. He'll take that, brokenness that you've lived through and gone through and do something with it. Did he ordain it? I can't say he ordained it. The Deuteronomy 30 verse 19 and 20, when God says, this day I set before you life and death, blessings and curses, but choose life that you and your descendants may live. The greatest gift that God has given each and every one of us is the ability to choose. Wow. That is so powerful. And we choose life and death, blessing and curses all the time. So I put it that, hey guys, let's stand up and take responsibility. A lot of this garbage, whether it's the pandemic or all the description in Galatians chapter 5 there, wouldn't be happening if we would choose Jesus and choose life instead of stuff of the flesh.
think it's a complex question. I think you're right. I agree with both of you gentlemen. I think we can make a sermon
On anything.
we can make a sermon for it being the devil. Certainly, I can say, I guess, Romans 8:28, and we know all things work together for our good. God can use, like I said earlier, I think the COVID pandemic and the racial unrest, it exposes something to us about our society. And I think that we could certainly, I think that the pandemic itself, sickness, disease, I always attribute those things to the devil, whether he starts them or not. I think a lot of times we allow things to do, and I think it speaks to where we are as a church. And I think we're seeing the weaknesses. It's exposing what we've overlooked and what we haven't paid attention to. So I just go to Romans 8:28 because I wouldn't disagree either way if somebody thought it was one way or the other. I just think that God will use it.
Yeah.
And I think
He'll
that
use it.
I
He
learned
won't
a
waste
lot
any.
during this time because of that. And I've had to repent for some things I've seen and holes I've seen during this time. I think the George Floyd video, watching somebody die, just like watching the blacks being hosed and dogs sicked on, I think it did more for racial relations to prick the hearts of people than the protest itself. The protest was subsequent. But I think when people get to see the brutality for the first, seeing it, watching a person die on film, like my brother said, Brother Boyer, it pricks the heart.
Yeah.
And I think we need to let that happen. And I think that definitely, is it of God or Satan? I think God will use it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with all of you brothers. You know a tree by its fruit, and I look at what COVID has caused, and I would have a hard time preaching a sermon thanking God for bringing COVID, or look what God did with COVID. I see Satan at work. However, at the same time, I see God at work. God always knows exactly what he's doing. And as my brother said, he uses everything for his honor and his purposes on the earth. And I see God at work doing amazing things in our time and in our hour.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. I love
you.
all of you.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Ray.
Love you guys.
It was
Thank
fun.
you, Ray. Thank all of you guys.
Yeah, thank you, Ray.
All right.
God bless y'all.